Seeing the confused look on Jacob's grandmother's face, Helen laughed.
What I meant was that Jacob has been tutoring our Soph for quite some time now, and he is like a member of our family.
Grandma laughed happily at this explanation and said,
Yeah, I can tell. Jacob does seem to have a good bond with Sophie.
Sophie's face turned a pretty shade of pink as she blushed hard. Grandma's approval meant a lot to her.
I just asked the doctor, and he said that if everything is okay, you can be discharged tomorrow,
Helen informed Grandma.
Thank you so much, but I still need to pay you back. Once I am discharged, I will have a look at the bills and pay you,
Grandma insisted. Helen didn't want to disrespect her, and so she nodded reluctantly and said,
All right. Mom, didn't you have an important client coming in today? I thought you were having dinner with him,
Sophie asked.
I showed him around the studio today, but since Jacob's grandma is ill, I canceled our dinner reservations.
Helen smiled. Jacob was touched that Helen had prioritized his grandma over her client. He knew how seriously Helen took her work, so cutting a meeting short for his family was a big deal. Helen kept on chatting with Grandma for a little while, who asked Helen to call her by her name, Louise. Grandma was also happy to have her company, since Jacob's parents were always working, so she never had anyone to talk to other than Jacob. During their conversation, Helen asked,
Louise, it's pretty inconvenient for you to stay at the beach house. Why don't you move into the city? Jacob's dad said that the air around the beach is fresher, so he bought me the cottage there. We sold our place in the city many years ago, she answered. Your health is delicate, and it's not safe for you to live alone over there. Jacob almost had a panic attack yesterday when this happened. I think it would be easier for you if you lived in the city.
Helen tried to convince her. Grandma was thinking about it as she turned to Jacob and imagined how stressed out he must have been the day before. Helen suddenly lit up and suggested,
How about you move in with us after you have recovered?
Jacob was listening to them intently, and he tensed up at the suggestion.
Grandma moving into Sophie's house? How is that possible? He thought. That's not necessary. Grandma waved off the offer. It would be too much to ask for. Besides, I'm used to living alone at the beach. It's okay. Plus, Jacob's parents are coming back next week, so they will be there to take care of me. Next week? Helen asked, with barely concealed excitement. Yes, I think by next Wednesday. I will ask Jacob's dad to take your family out for dinner to thank you for saving my life, said Grandma. Please don't bother with all that. Like I said, we are a family.
Helen kept mentioning the word family, but never revealed why.
But it'll be good if we met his parents, too.
Jacob's heart sank. He felt like he had just fallen into a trap. Although his grandma looked healthy, she did have a high blood pressure that needed to be controlled. The sudden news of his engagement could be dangerous for her, but it was also a fact that Helen had just done a huge favor for him, and he didn't want to stop her from having her way.
Great! I'll have Jacob's dad make a reservation when he comes back so we can all have dinner together.
Grandma's eyes lit up as she spoke. Helen couldn't contain her excitement and glanced at Jacob, and he sighed helplessly. He knew that the meeting was destined to happen, even if this incident with Grandma never happened. With Dracon heading the MTX group, he would meet up with Jacob's parents through one business meeting or another. Helen added in the heat of the moment,
Okay, then maybe you can stay with us until your son comes back. You are still recovering, so you can't live alone. Plus, we live very close to Jacob's university. You guys will be able to see each other often because Jacob comes to tutor Soph every day. Jacob was worried when he heard the news yesterday. This way, he can focus on his classes with ease, knowing that you are safe at our house.
Those words were persuasive, but Grandma was still hesitant.
That's too much trouble. I don't want to be a burden. Not at all. We have a spare room, and I will get it ready for you in no time.
It's not troublesome at all, really," Helen said enthusiastically. Grandma turned to Jacob and gave him a helpless look. She didn't want to be rude, but she was still unsure. They were his employers, after all. Jacob was in a dilemma himself. On one hand, he didn't want to trouble Soph's family. They had already done way too much. On the other hand, he wanted to make sure that Grandma was being taken care of. He wanted her to recover soon, and that wasn't possible without constant care. Uncle James was not young and clearly not a very good caregiver. Jacob would be constantly worried if he let her return to the cottage directly from the hospital and feel helpless because he would be far away from her. Therefore, he said, after a thorough consideration of the situation, "Since my parents will be home next week, Grandma should stay with you for the time being." He then turned to his grandmother and said, "We can take you back to the cottage after Mom and Dad come back." He thought to himself, "We have to find a way to pay back Sophie's family. They have spent so much time, energy, and money on my grandma." Grandma finally made up her mind, as she didn't want Jacob to constantly go back and forth from his college to her beach house. It would affect his studies, as well as cause him a lot of worry. She finally turned to Helen and said, "All right, I'll stay with you. I hope I'm not putting you out." "Of course not. It is my pleasure to host you. Louise, you rest well. Tomorrow, I will send a car to pick you up first thing in the morning," Helen said cheerfully. She stood up and lightly hugged Grandma. She waved Sophie to come over and say goodbye. "Goodbye, Grandma. I will see you tomorrow," Sophie said to Jacob's grandma with the sweetest smile on her face. Grandma lightly touched Sophie's face and smiled. "You have met a really great family, Jacob," Grandma sighed as the mother and daughter walked out of the room. The next morning, after examining Jacob's grandma's condition, the doctor confirmed that everything was fine. He told Jacob to complete the discharge procedures. After everything was done, Jacob held on to his grandma and helped her walk out of the hospital. She was still weak. The familiar black limousine was already waiting outside. It was 5 meters away from the entrance. Grandma looked at Jacob with a raised eyebrow, but before she could say anything, she heard someone step forward to greet them. Elder Frank, dressed in an expensive 3-piece suit, was standing beside the car with 2 brawny men. He was here to escort them over to Sophie's house. Seeing Jacob walk out with his grandmother, Elder Frank hurried over. "Congratulations on your recovery, ma'am. I am Frank. Please get in the car and make yourself comfortable." Jacob's grandmother was uncomfortable being greeted like this by a man who was much older than her. Baffled, she turned to look at Jacob. She had so many questions. Jacob was feeling awkward as well when he saw people moving in and out of the hospital, staring at them. He had no idea how to explain any of this to his grandmother. Instead, he focused on helping her get into the car and made sure she was comfortable before they drove off. On the way, Elder Frank was all smiles but remained silent. Jacob's grandmother was full of questions, but she refrained from asking them. Jacob's gaze dwindled between Elder Frank and his grandmother continuously. He cleared his throat to fill the awkward silence, but was met with weird and sharp stares from both of them. Only one thought occupied his mind. This is going to be a long week.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.